welcome to satsang. Yes.
What does the energy of heart feel like?
It can be described as beautiful. It can be described as nourishing. You feel like you'd like to do anything for it. And so when heart appears, the mind just wants to take care of everything and everyone. Because love is strong and it affects the mind that way. It makes it feel like you are the caretaker of everything and everyone, and you just want to take care of everything because you love everything. It's very beautiful. It's the true jewel of consciousness.
I've heard that you had many heart awakenings as a seeker. What causes the heart to awaken?
The heart awakenings I had were caused by different reasons. Some of them were because I was in the presence of other people who had their hearts open, my teachers. Some of them were a result of incidents that occurred in my life that somehow allowed me to open right up and facilitate heart. Heart openings or heart awakenings are just invitations to serve heart. And if the mind falls into service of heart, it will practice openness and undefendedness, and this is the right environment for love to be experienced. And so the mind, in a way, falls in love with heart and does whatever it can do to facilitate heart by getting out of the way.
Can the heart close again after awakening?
Heck, oh yeah. All you got to do is contract. All you got to do is go into resistance, and you cut yourself off. And because the mind and the body are really just survival mechanisms, and they contract and resist any time there's a threat or any time there's a disagreement, people cut themselves off regularly from experiencing love because of their support of resistance and contraction in themselves. If you really want to support love, you stay open. No matter what, you stay open. And as your consciousness levels rise and you find that you find a lot of heart, you recognize there's a deal. And the deal works a little bit like this. Everything for heart and nothing for you. And so that's a good deal. But that means you don't contract, you don't go into resistance, you don't turn yourself into a victim of life. You accept life as it is. And because you're accepting life as it is, you're not contracting, you're not resisting, and you're actually supporting heart. The downside of that is you're vulnerable. And it's not like we open up and all of a sudden the world becomes a kinder, nicer, gentler place. It doesn't. It stays the same. And so you're vulnerable and you'll get hurt. And that's part of the price for supporting heart, the willingness to feel pain.
So how did heart awakening change your life?
Well, it had me walk into my companies and give them to my staff. Because I was a businessman, I'd been a businessman for a long time, and I had a big company, and I recognised that the way I'd been programmed, which was pretty much like a war machine, wasn't in support of heart. And I had a lot of trouble undoing it while I was still in business. So I walked into my companies in 1987 and gave my companies to my staff and walked out without anything. Because I felt at that time heart was more valuable than anything I owned. And it was worthy of everything.
So why do you call your teaching the way of the heart?
Because there is no other way. Ultimately, it's like people go for enlightenment, and there's two pathways. The Ani path, which is the path of discipline, meditation, self-inquiry, and the Bhakti path, which is the path of devotion and love. But no matter which path you take, or you take a combination of the two, it always ends up with the mind being an absolute devotee of truth. It always ends up with the way of the heart, ultimately. Because it's in that love affair that the mind has with beingness that it lays down and surrenders itself unconditionally and stays down. So, and the way of the heart's beautiful. It's like being in service to the planet, being in service to other human beings, being in service to animals, trees, flowers. It's lovely. It's a lovely way to live. Being in service to yourself is quite a bit like a desert. It's dry. All the joy in the world comes from giving. It doesn't come from taking. All the misery in the world comes from taking. As a giver, you have a very beautiful life. You have a certain level of happiness for no reason, for the reason that it brings you happiness to be a giver. It doesn't bring you happiness to be a taker. So I teach the way of the heart, which was also my teacher's teaching, the way of the heart. So I copied him. And if you examine Buddhism, it's the way of the heart. So here we are, having a talk about the way of the heart. And it's quite foreign to us as Westerners, the way of the heart. We live in quite a selfish world in a lot of ways, where it's all about what can I get for me, what's good for me, what's comfortable for me. And that's the opposite to the way of the heart. And so it's hard to grab hold of the way of the heart and operate it, because a lot of us have been programmed to not do that. We've been programmed to be selfish. And selfishness has its own rewards, and they're not nice. So for me to learn the way of the heart took a lot of practice over a long period of time, because I really wasn't good at it. But I knew it was the only way to go.
I find it very difficult to put myself aside all the time. And I hear that it was hard for you at the start. What was it about it that you found difficult?
Everything. Because I was selfish. I'd become bigger, better and more powerful than most of the people I knew, because I was successful in business. And that was in the way of the heart, that image I had of myself, that identity I had. Because when you have an image like that of yourself, you've got to keep it up. It takes energy to maintain. It takes no energy at all to be open and undefended. It actually takes energy to have a structure of being a somebody, particularly somebody who's powerful and successful. And so I had to dismantle that structure so I could be free of it. And I did. little bit by little bit, brick by brick.
So I close and harden in the face of emotional pain, and I feel my heart close. Was that taking yourself apart, deconstructing yourself, painful? And how did you deal with that pain and hurt?
It was painful, but the only time it becomes suffering is when you're in resistance to it. I had seen that, I think I was 33 and I'd been around the block a lot. And I'd seen that I was starting to repeat the same day, the same month, the same year, over and over again. And I looked at all my friends and I looked at my parents and I looked at the world I was living in and I saw that people repeat. They don't change much. And I wanted to go higher than that in consciousness. And I recognised that the way of the heart, openness, facilitates higher consciousness. And I was interested in that. I was more interested in that than in being a somebody that was successful. And so I started dismantling myself, and it was painful because underneath all these structures was a whole pile of wounding that I hadn't dealt with, that I'd just I'd rafted over with this personality that was successful. And so I had to feel that to heal it. And that was definitely painful. All my abandonment wounding, betrayal wounding, it's not fair wounding, injustice wounding, whatever was there had to be experienced so it could be healed. So I could be open and not trying to defend myself from feeling stuff that I'd repressed. And it was a task. It took a while because there was a myriad of defense systems. It's like you take one defense system down and another one slides in its place. And then you take that one down and another one slides in its place. We are really defended against feeling things that we don't want to feel. Mostly because there's a fear of feeling those feelings. There's a fear of the pain. There's a fear of the yuckiness in low self-worth. There's a fear of totally being out of control. And it's our need to be in control, our need to survive, that quite often gets in the way of us actually healing our wounds. Because we have to be defended all the time to survive. But if you have a look at life, if you remain defended, you keep yourself separate from everything. Those defense systems that you have keep you in a space of separation rather than connection. When you remove the defense systems, you're connected with everything. And that's very beautiful. But it means you have to have the courage to walk through the world open, not closed. And that's up to you. No one can really help you. No one can do it for you. Only you can do that. And you have to want to.
So would you say that in that openness, love is a pathway to enlightenment?
Oh yeah, it's definitely a pathway to enlightenment. Because if you serve love, it will destroy you. Not love won't destroy you, but the service of love will destroy you. Because in taking away the obstacles that are in the way, you are actually removing you. You're removing you. You're removing your defense systems. Anything that causes contraction inside of you is being undone. And as you go through, you become lesser and lesser and lesser as an I, and more real. Because there's nothing real about the I. And the bigger the I, the more fraud there is. You end up being a nobody, going nowhere, and then you're really being authentic, because that's what we all are. Nobody's going nowhere. Anything else is just a thought structure, a set of belief systems based on reference points from the past projected to the future that can only be held in imagination, and the imagination is not real. Without a thought, who are you? What is here? Because as a meditator, you discover reasonably quickly that we can be here without a thought. So if we're here without thoughts, we're not the thoughts. We're something else. We're something before thoughts. And that's what the seeker's looking for. That is before thoughts, or that thoughts appear in the background. Our true nature, truth.